The Markandeya Purana Part 3. Om Shakti Hrim Om Namo Narayanaya. Creation. But Jaimini now wanted to know about the creation, and the birds obliged. The same Lord created the world as Brahma, preserved it as a Vishnu, and destroyed it as a Shiva. When Brahma was born, the text of the Vedas and the Puranas emerged from his four mouths. These Vedas and Puranas the learned sages have divided into several thousand texts. Brahma created the seven famous rishis and several other sages from the powers of his mind, and these rishis accepted the Vedas and the Puranas. Chayavana obtained the Puranas from the sage Bhrigu and gave them to the other rishis, who in turn gave them to the Daksha. From the Daksha, Markandeya obtained the Puranas. The stories of the Puranas reduce the sins of the Kali era. The Brahman is everywhere, at the end of every destruction. The Brahman cannot be described. It cannot be measured, and it is never destroyed. It has neither smell, nor form, nor sound. It extends up to eternity, and it is the center of all creation. At the time of creation, the Brahman produced an egg, which floated on the water and grew bigger and bigger. Inside the egg there was the universe. From the egg there emerged Brahma, the original creator. But Brahma himself had no creator. Brahma's time is beyond of all conception of human time. The smallest unit of time is a nimesha. 15 nimeshas make one kashtha, and 30 kasthas are one kava. 30 kavas make one muhurta, and 30 muhurtas amount to the one day. In one night for humans, 15 such days and nights are one paksha, and 2 pakshas make 1 month. 6 months make 1 ayana, and 2 ayanas are 1 year. 1 year for humans is equivalent to 1 day and 1 night for the gods. The 4 eras spend 12,000 years of the gods. 4,000 years are for Satya Yuga, 3,000 years for Treta Yuga, 2,000 years for Dvapara Yuga, and 1,000 years for Kali Yuga. This accounts for 10,000 years. What of the remaining 2,000 years? These are divided into Satyas and Satya Amshas. The period of time that is in between one Yuga and another. 800 years are between Satya Yuga and Treta Yuga. 600 years between Treta Yuga and Dvapara Yuga. 400 years between Dvapara Yuga and Kali Yuga. And 200 years between Kali Yuga and the new Satya Yuga. This completes the tally of 12,000 years for the gods. 1,000 times these 12,000 years for these devas is 1 day for Brahma. Within the span of one of Brahma's days, 14 Manus arrive and go. And the beginning of each Manvantara cycle, Indra and the other devas, the rishis, the Manus, rulers and the kings are created, and at the end of each Manvantara they are destroyed. There are roughly 71 cycles of the 4 yugas in each Manvantara. There is a destruction at the end of Brahma's day, and the 3 worlds of Bhuvarloka, Bhurloka and Svargaloka are destroyed. At the time of this destruction the universe is full of water, and Brahma sleeps on the water throughout the night that follows. When the new day starts, creation begins again. The present cycle of creation took place as follows. At the end of the night, Brahma woke up. At the same time, Vishnu, who had also been sleeping on the waters, got up. That is the reason why Vishnu is called Narayana. Nara means water and ayana is to sleep. so that Narayana is someone who sleeps on the water. Narayana got up and found that the ass was immersed deep in the water. He therefore adopted the form of white bull, Varaha, and entered the water. He raised the ass up with his tusk. The ass floated on the water like a huge boat. Vishnu then leveled out the ass and created the mountains. He divided the land mass into 7 Dvipas or regions. Vishnu then adopted the form of Brahma and began to create living beings. He made the Asuras, the Devas, the ancestors, and the humans. The demons came out of his thighs, the gods out of his mouth, and the ancestors and the humans from other portion of his anatomy. Because of process of creation, the demons were destined to become strongest at night, the gods during the day, the humans during the full moon, and the ancestors in the evening. Brahma then created some more beings. A few of these tried to eat up Brahma's body, and this came to be called Yakshas. Others tried to protect Brahma's body, and this came to be called Rakshasas. From the word Raksha for protecting. Brahma was not at all glad to see these Yakshas and Rakshasas. The hair on his head stood up and began to move around. The word for this being Sarpana. When these hairs fell on the ground, snakes were created, and hence snakes are called Sarpa. The Gandharvas were also born. Many were the animals and birds that Brahma created. From his mouth were born goats, from his breast birds, from his stomach and sides cattle, from his feet horses, elephants, donkeys, rabbits, deer, and camel. From the hair of his body were created the herbs. The text for any living being was predestined right at the time of creation. At the beginning in Satya Yuga, living beings were free of desire, jealousy, or hatred. All of them were equals, and there were no superiors or inferiors. There were some beautiful trees then which produced whatever one wanted. They were thus called Kalpa-vrikshas, but gradually humans learned anger, and these trees withered away. Some of them survived till the beginning of Treta Yuga. From the barks of these trees men made clothing, and from the fruits they made jewelry and ornaments. Money also came out of this fruit, and men lived on the honey. But men tried to explore the trees more than they should have, and so all the trees died. Men came to know of hunger and thirst. This was a period when the cities and efforts started being built. Measurements were needed when such construction began. The smallest units of measurement were Paramanu, Trasarenu, and Dhuli. Slightly larger units of measurement were Keshagra, Nishka, Yuka, and Yava. 11 Yavas made 1 anguli or finger, and 6 fingers 1 pada. 2 padas were 1 vitasti, and 2 vitasti were 1 hasta, hand. 4 hastas were 1 dhanurdanda, and 2000 dhanurdandas were made 1 gavyuti. 4 gavyutis formed 1 yajana. There were various types of habitations that were built. There were Pura, Ketaka, Dronimukha, Shankhanagara, Karvataka, Trai, Grama, and Sangosha. A Pura had to have tall walls and moats. It had to be 1/4 of a yajana high, and it had to be octagonal in design. Preferably, water should surround it to the north and to the east. A bamboo bridge should be constructed over the moats. A place that roughly possessed half the traits of a Pura was called a Ketaka, and a place that possessed half the traits of a Ketaka was called a Karvataka. A place that had half the characteristic of a Karvataka was called a Dronimukha. A Pura with walls but without moats was called a Varmavat Pura. A Shankanagara was a place where ministers and captains lived. A place where the Shudras lived with their cattle was called a Grama. Visitors from other cities stayed in Vasati. The cowherds lived in a place called Gosha, Gashala. There were no shops there and no ownership of land. There were Oshadis, herbs on the earth in Treta Yuga. Men lived on these herbs, but they exploited the herbs too much and soon they disappeared. The earth swallowed up the herbs and there was nothing for man to eat. Men sought the protection of Brahma and Brahma began to milk the earth. This produced the seeds of food grains and 17 different types of fruit trees. From his mental powers, Brahma created 9 sons, whose names were Phrigu, Pulastya, Pulaha, Kratu, Angira, Marichi, Daksha, Atri, and Vasishka. Brahma also made Rudra and Dharma. All of these were mental creations. But Brahma also created beings from his own physical body. A man and a woman were born. The man was called Swayambhu Manu, and he was appointed the protector and ruler of all living beings on earth. The woman was called Shatarupa. Swayambhu Manu married Shatarupa, and they had 2 sons and 2 daughters. The sons were named Priyavrata and Uttanapada, and they became famous through their deeds. The daughters were Riddhi and Prasuti. Prasuti married Daksha and Riddhi married Ruchi. Daksha and Prasuti had 24 daughters. 13 of these were married to Dharma. The remaining 11 were married to Bhrigu. Mahadeva, Marichi, Angira, Pulastya, Pulaha, Kratu, Vasishka, Atri, Vani, and Ankestas. There was a reason why Rudra came to be called Rudra. Brahma wanted to create a son who would be just like himself. And when he thought of this, a reddish-blue sun appeared on Brahma's lap, and he began to cry. "Why are you crying?" asked Brahma. "Because I don't have a name," was the reply. "All right," said Brahma, "since you cried, your name shall be Rudra, from the word Rud for crying." But the child kept crying again and again. Brahma had to give him a name. This went on for 7 times, and so Rudra acquired 7 more names. Apart from Rudra, the other names were Bhava, Sarva, Ishana, Pashupati, Bhima, Ugra, and Mahadeva. One of Rudra's wives was Sati. Sati died as a result of Daksha's anger, and was later born as a daughter of Menaka and Himavan. Rudra married the daughter Parvati. The son of Swayambhuva Manu divided up the earth into 7 regions, Dvipas. The name of these regions were Plaksha, Shaumala, Kusha, Krauncha, Shaka, Pushkara, Jambu, Agnidra. Inherited Jambu Dvipa from his father and Agnidra and 9 sons named Nabhi, Kimpurusha, Hari, Ilavrata, Ramya, Hiranya, Kuru, Bhadra, and Ketumala. Each of these sons inherited part of Jambu Dvipa, and Jambu Dvipa itself was accordingly divided up into 9 regions or Varshas. Nabhi's son was Rishabha, and Rishabha's son was Bharata. After Bharata, the land came to be known as Bharatavarsha. The 7 Dvipas were surrounded by 7 oceans, whose names were Lavana, Ikshu, Sura, Sarpi, Dadhi, Dudha, and Java. The 7 major mountain ranges of Jambu Dvipa were Himavan, Himakuta, Rishabha, Meru, Nila, Shveta, and Shringi. Ilavritavarsha was right in the middle of Jambu Dvipa. To the east was Haradvarsha, and to the west Ketumavarsha. In the center of Ilavrita-Varsha was Mount Shumeru. On the top of Mount Shumeru was Brahma's gigantic assembly Shabha, which extended over 14,000 yajnas. Below there were the mountains Mandara, Ganhamadana, Vipua and Suparshva. Mount Mandara was full of Kadamba trees. Mount of Ganhamadana had Jambu trees, and the other two mountains were full of banyan trees. Jamun fruits from the Jambu trees on mountain Ganhamandana fell into a mountain river known as Jambu Nadi. From this river the region came to be known as Jambu Dvipa. In the sky, the river Ganga entered the lunar circle. It mixed with the rays of the sun and became holy, and then fell on Mount Shumeru. They divided into four. The river Shita followed eastwards, the river Alakananda southwards, the river Swarakshu westwards, and the river Soma northwards. Alakananda flowed into Nandanavana, a favorite spot of the gods, before it flowed into Manasa Saravara. When it entered the Himalayas, the Shiva captured Ganga and would not let go until he was pleased by Bhagiratka's tapasya. The Kiratas or hunters lived to the east of Bharatavarsha. To the west lived the Yavanas. The mountains of Bharatavarsha were Mahendra, Malaya, Sakya, Shuktimana, Riksha, Vindhya and Paripatra. From the foothills of the Himalayas there originated the rivers Ganga, Saraswati, Sindhu, Chandrabhaga, Yamuna, Shatadru, Vitastha, Iravati, Kuhu, Gomati, Vahuda, Drishadvati, Vipaksha, Devika, Ramkshmu, Nishchira, Gandaki and Kaushiki. There were many other rivers which originated from the other mountain ranges. There used to be a Brahmana who was more handsome than the two Ashwinis. The Brahmana was learned in the Shastras and was a very good man. He lived in the city known as Arunaspada, on the banks of the river Varuna. He was always very happy to have guests. The only desire that the Brahmana had was to get a chance to see the entire world. Once a guest arrived at the Brahmana's house, the guest was very knowledgeable in the use of herbs and incantation. The guest described to the Brahmana the various countries, cities, forests, rivers, mountains and places of pilgrimage that were to be seen in the entire world. The Brahmana asked the guest, "You are not old, in fact, you are still fairly young. Tell me, how have you managed to travel through the whole world at such young age?" The guest replied, "Brahmana, through the use of herbs and mantras, I can travel 1,000 yajanas in half a day." "Please give me these herbs," said the Brahmana. "It is my desire to see the whole world." The guest was a generous person, so he rubbed the pest of various herbs on the Brahmana's feet. Then he told the Brahmana what to do. The Brahmana reckoned that he would travel 1,000 yajanas in the morning and return in the evening. He first set out for the Himalayas and arrived there in no time. He wandered around there, and also he did not notice it at the time. The ice on the mountains washed away the pest of the herb from his feet. The Brahmana saw the peaks of the mountains and the places which were loved by the Devas, the Gandharvas and the Apsaras. He saw the waterfalls and he heard the singing of birds. He smelled the fragrance of unknown flowers. Then he thought that he would come back again the next day and wished to leave for home. It was then that he discovered that the pest on his feet has been washed off and that he could not get back home. While the Brahmana was looking for a way to return home, an Apsara named Varudhini saw the Brahmana and fell in love with him. She wanted to marry him and desired that the Brahmana should stay with her. But the Brahmana was more interested in returning home before sunset. He sat down to pray and prayed to the god of fire Agni that he might be returned home. And the fire god returned him to his home. But Varudhini was desolate. She wanted to marry the Brahmana and would be satisfied with nothing else. Her frame began to waste away. There was a Gandharva named Kali who had early wanted to marry Varudhini. But Varudhini had turned him down. Kali discovered Varudhini in this desolate state and found out what had happened. He saw his chance. He adopted the form of the Brahmana and arrived before Varudhini. Varudhini was delighted because she did not realize that there was Kali and not the Brahmana. Kali, in the form of the Brahmana, agreed to marry Varudhini, provided that she stuck on to one condition. The condition was that while they were in the forest, Varudhini would never raise her eyes and look at her husband. This condition Varudhini agreed to. Varudhini and Kali married and lived happily on the mountains for some time. They had a son named Svarachakh, who was so named because he was very bright to look at. Kali left as soon as his son was born, but Svarachakh grew up to be very learned, well versed in the Vedas and the Shastras and in the arts of fighting. When he grew up to be a young man, Svarachakh went on a visit to Mount Mandara. There he met a very frightened woman who came running to him and said, "Save me." Svarachakh wanted to know what had happened and she told him the story. Her name was Manarama and she was the daughter of Vidyadhara, singer of heaven, named Indivara. She had two friends named Vibhavari and Kalavati. One day the three friends had gone to Mount Kailasa. There they saw a sage who was extremely weak as a result of the tapasya that he had undergone. His voice was weak with hunger and his eyes were sunken. At the appearance of the sage, Manarama made fun of him. The sage became angry and cursed Manarama that she would be captured by Rakshasa. Her friends Vibhavari and Kalavati protested, since they thought that a sage who was performing tapasya should not be moved to curse people at such minor things. What was a sage if he was not able to control his anger? The angry sage even further, and he cursed Vibhavari and Kalavati that one of them should contract leprosy and the other tuberculosis. Immediately this is what took place. As for Manarama, 3 days had elapsed since that incident, and ever since then a terrible Rakshasa had been following Manarama everywhere. "Can you not hear him roam?" asked Manarama of Svarachakh. Manarama had a powerful weapon with her. This weapon had been given by Rudra to Swayambhu Manu and Swayambhu Manu to Vasishka. Manarama's grandfather had obtained it from Vasishka and now Manarama possessed it. She offered the weapon to Svarachakh if only Svarachakh would protect her from the Rakshasa. This Svarachakh agreed to do, and Manarama taught him the techniques of releasing, controlling and withdrawing the weapon. Meanwhile the Rakshasa arrived with a thunderous roar. Svarachakh thought that the best thing would be to let the Rakshasa capture Manarama, since that would at least ensure that the sage's curse had come true. So he waited till Rakshasa had actually captured Manarama, before raising his weapon. On seeing the weapon, the Rakshasa requested Svarachakh to refrain from releasing the weapon. "Let me tell you my story," he said. "The sage Brahma Mitra had cursed me, and today you have released me from the spell of that curse. My name is Indavara, and I am Manarama's father. The sage Brahma Mitra is learned in Ayurveda medicine, and I desire to learn Ayurveda from him. But Brahma Mitra refused, so I secretly eavesdropped while he was teaching, and unknown to Brahma Mitra picked up the entire knowledge in a matter of 8 months. When Brahma Mitra got to know about this, he cursed me that I would become a Rakshasa. I fell at his feet and begged for mercy. Brahma Mitra then told me that I would be freed of the curse the day I tried to eat my own daughter. Thanks to you, the day has come. Tell me what you want from me. At least marry my daughter." Indavara also taught Svarachakh the knowledge of Ayurveda. But when it came to Svarachakh and Manarama getting married, Manarama objected. She was not averse to marrying Svarachakh. In fact, she had fallen in love with him, but she was not ready to do it as long as her friends suffered from leprosy and tuberculosis. This was no problem since Svarachakh had learned the techniques of Ayurveda. With this technique he cured Vibhavari and Kalavati, and he married Manarama, Vibhavari and Kalavati. Vibhavari could understand the languages of all living beings, and she taught this art to Svarachakh. Kalavati knew the art that he is known as Padmini, the art of controlling all the jellos. This art she taught Svarachakh. Svarachakh lived happily with his 3 wives. But one day he heard a dog and its friend discussing him and his wife amongst themselves. The dog maintained that Svarachakh and his wives seemed to be very happy, but the dog's friend disagreed. Now, how could a person who was simultaneously married to 3 wives be happy? A person should be married to only one wife at the time. Svarachakh felt ashamed at hearing this conversation, but he nevertheless lived in the mountain with his wife for 100 years. After 100 years had passed, Svarachakh heard a conversation among some deer. The deer said the same thing, that an individual who simultaneously had 3 wives ought to be ashamed of himself. Svarachakh was ashamed yet again, but he continued to live in the mountains with his wife for further 106 years. From his 3 wives he had 3 sons named Vijaya, Merunanda and Prabhata. Manarama's son was Vijaya, Vibhavari's son was Merunanda, and Kalavati's son was Prabhata. Svarachakh built 3 cities for his 3 sons with the powers of the art Padmini. To the east, on top of the peak that is known as Kamarupa, he built a city for Vijaya. To the north, he built a city named Nadavati for Merunanda, and to the south, he built a city named Tala for Prabhata. One day Svarachakh went to hunt wild boar in the forest. He was about to let loose an arrow at a boar when a deer suddenly arrived and said, "Please do not shoot the boar, shoot me instead." "Who are you?" asked Svarachakh, "and why should I shoot you?" "I am in love with you and I want to marry you," replied the deer. "How is it possible?" asked Svarachakh. "I am a human being and you are a deer." "Embrace me and see," says the deer. Svarachakh embraced the deer, and the deer immediately turned into a beautiful woman. She said that she was the goddess of the forest and wished to marry Svarachakh. Svarachak did so, and a powerful son was born to them. When the son was born, the devas began to play musical instruments from the sky. The Gandharvas sang and the Apsaras danced. The 4 elephants of the 4 directions began to sprinkle water, and the sages and the gods showered flowers. The 4 directions were ablaze with the energies that radiated from the sun. Because he was so radiant, the sun was christened Dyutimana. Also he was known as a Svarachisha. After a while, Svarachak got tired of material pursuit and went off to the forest to perform tapasya with his wives. Svarachisha was destined to rule as a Manu. During this Manvantara, the Indra was Vipashit, and the 7 rishis were Urjya, Stamha, Prana, Datoli, Rishabha, Nischara, and Arvarivan. The Svarachisha Manvantara was the second of Manvantaras to took place, the first one having been the Swayambhuva Manvantara. The next Manvantara was the Uttama Manvantara. King Uttanapada and his wife Suruchi had a son named Uttama. Uttama was brave and righteous, and his glory lit up the earth like the sun. He treated friends and enemies and the sun and his subjects alike. King Uttama's wife was Vahuva, and Uttama was devoted to Vahuva. Unfortunately, Vahuva was not that devoted to Uttama. She was not satisfied with the garlands and the beautiful clothes that the king brought her. Once the king was in assembly hall and was sipping wine. He had a bit too much to drink and offered the queen some wine as well. But the queen refused the goblet, and the king felt that he had been insulted in front of this assembled guests. He became very angry and ordered the guards to take the queen away and leave her alone in the thick forest. This did not disturb the queen so much, because she had never been particularly fond of Uttama. But the king was very sad at what he had done on the spur on the moment, and he resolved never to marry again. He, however, continued to rule over the kingdom, as well as he had done before. One day Brahmana came to the king with a complaint. He had been sleeping in his house at night, and even so the door of the house has been closed. Someone had come and had kidnapped the Brahmana's wives. He wished that Uttama might recover his wife for him. "How will I do this impossible task?" asked Uttama. "You don't even know who has kidnapped your wife. Where I am to search?" "King, that is for you to decide," replied Brahmana. "We pay you 1/6 of our earnings as tax, so that we may be protected." Uttama then asked the Brahmana to describe his wife, and the Brahmana said that his wife was tall with short arms, chin of face, and quite ugly to look at. Her voice was harsh, and her temper was full. The king was greatly surprised. Why was the Brahmana sorry when such a wife had been kidnapped? Why did he not simply marry again? But the Brahmana replied that his wife was his wife, and he could never forsake her. He wanted his own wife back and no other. Uttama ascended on a chariot and went to look for the Brahmana's wife. He wandered where and there, but could find her nowhere. Eventually he arrived at the ashrama of a sage. On seeing the king, the sage got up. "Bring some offering," he instructed his disciple. "I will do so," replied the disciple, "but will you please decide whether the king is worthy of such offerings?" The sage thought about it a while and then offered the king a seat without the offerings. After they had conversed for a while, the king asked the sage, "Tell me, why did you give me the offerings that you had asked for?" The sage replied, "King, the moment I saw you, I asked for the offerings so that they might be given to you. Through my powers I can see all that has happened, all that is happening and all that will happen. I have taught these powers to my disciple. When my disciple asked me to think about giving you the offerings, I thought about what had happened and realized that also you come of a noble line. You do not really deserve these offerings. For after all, you left your wife in the forest. As soon as you did that, you deviated from the path of Dharma. How could I offer your offerings? The wife's duty is to serve her husband, but the husband's duty is to protect his wife, no matter what her nature might be. In thus, the Brahmana was displayed more sense than you have." King Uttama was ashamed. He bowed before the sage and asked, "You know everything. Please tell me where I can find the Brahmana's wife. Now can I get there?" The sage replied, "A Rakshasa named Valaka has kidnapped the Brahmana's wife. You will find her in the forest that is known as Utpalavata." Uttama ascended his chariot and went to that forest. He found the Brahmana's wife there and also found the demon. As soon as he saw the king, the demon fell at Uttama's feet and said, "I am honored that the king has come to my house. Please be seated and tell me what I can do for you." "Why have you kidnapped the Brahmana's wife?" asked Uttama. "Do you wish to eat her? Do you wish to marry her?" "Neither," said the demon. "I am not the sort of Rakshasa that feeds on flesh. I feed on the qualities of human. If I eat up forgiveness, humans become angry, and if I eat up bad qualities, humans become good. Neither do I wish to marry her. I have plenty of beautiful wives of my own." "Then why did you kidnap her?" asked Uttama. "Because the Brahmana performs yajnas and recites mantras, which drive off us Rakshasas. But a man can never perform a yajna satisfactorily in the absence of his wife. That is why I kidnapped his wife, because without his wife his yajnas would lose all their power. Without his wife a man is nothing." This is what greatly disturbed King Uttama. He realized that they related to him much more than they related to the Brahmana. Uttama asked the demon to return the Brahmana's wife. He also requested the demon to eat up all the bad traits of the Brahmana's wife so that the wife became polite and courteous. The Rakshasa did as he had been asked to do. Uttama was depressed because he now wanted to be united with his wife. But where was his wife? To find out, he went back to this learned sage. The sage told him that his wife was now in the underworld. When Uttama's wife was wandering around in the forest, she was discovered there by Kapataka, the king of the Nagas, and Kapataka took her down to the underworld. In fact, Kapataka desired to marry Uttama's wife, but Kapataka already had a wife named Manarama, and Manarama's daughter was named Nanda. Nanda did not want her father to have another wife apart from her mother, Manarama. So Nanda had hidden Uttama's wife. And since Nanda had not returned Uttama's wife when Kapataka had asked for her, Kapataka had cursed his daughter that she should become dumb. But Uttama was still not sure about whether he should try and bring his wife back from the underworld. For he kept on thinking that his wife Vahua was after all not devoted to him. But when the Brahmana whose wife Uttama had rescued learned of this, he found a solution. The solution was to perform a yajna known as Mitravinda. This yajna ensured the couples became devoted to each other. The Brahmana did not perform this ceremony only once, but 7 times in succession. Meanwhile, Uttama asked the Rakshasa Valaka to fetch his wife from the underworld, and this the demon did. Uttama and Vahua were happily reunited and were henceforth devoted to each other. But Vahua wanted that her friend Nanda should no longer remain dumb. The Brahmana performed another ceremony which ensured this. Nanda was so pleased that she granted Uttama a boon. The boon was that Uttama would have a powerful son who would be a Manu. In due course, such a son was born to Uttama and Vahua. The baby was as beautiful as a full moon. And when the baby was born, the gods played musical instruments and showered flowers from the sky. The son came to be known as Uttama. The Uttama Manvantara was the 3rd Manvantara that took place. During this period, the title of Indra was held by a person named Sushanti. Tamasa Manvantara. There was a famous king named Svarasthra, who was learned, performed many yajnas, and was never defeated in battle. Because of his tapasya, Surya was pleased to grant him a long life. The king had 100 wives, but the wives were not blessed with the boon of long lives. The king, ministers and servants also died, so that the king was left alone. This made him sad, and he began to lose his powers. Eventually another king named Vimarda dislodged Svarashtra from his kingdom and conquered it. The defeated Svarashtra went off to the forest. He went to the banks of the river Vitasha and began to meditate. In the summer his tapasya was inside fire, in the monsoon out in the open, and in the winter under the water. Once the king was performing tapasya during the monsoon, when dark clouds gathered everywhere and it began to rain. It rained and the 4 directions became dark. It rained so much that there was a flood. As a result of the rain and the flood, the king was flung out into the middle of the river and could not swim back to the banks. But there was a deer which was also floating in the water, and the king managed to grasp the deer's tail. The deer pulled the king down into the underworld, into a beautiful grove that was there. In the underworld, the deer told the king that she had actually been his favorite wife, Utpalavati, in her early life. In that life, when she had been young, she had chased off a deer. At that a sage named Sutapah, who had then been in the form of deer, had become very angry and had cursed her that she would be born as a deer in the next life. And that was how Utpalavati had now met her early husband as a deer. Svarashtra was delighted to have met Utpalavati in this fashion. They had a son. Since the son had been born when the world was in darkness, he was named Tamasa, darkness. Tamasa grew up in the forest. He learned of his history from his father. He also prayed to the sun, obtaining all sorts of the divine weapons. With its weapons he conquered the entire world. This was the fourth of Tamasa Manvantara. During this Manvantara, the title of Indra was held by Shakti, and the seven rishis were Jyotirthama, Pridhu, Kavya, Chaitya, Agni, Valaka, and Pivara. King Tamasa had several strong and powerful sons who ruled after him. Raivataka Manvantara. The fifth Manvantara was Raivataka Manvantara. There was a sage named Ritavak, who did not have any sons. But when the nakshatra Rivati was in the sky, the sage finally had a son. The sage tried to bring up his son well, but the son turned out to be wicked and evil. As a result of this, the sage fell ill, and his wife also contracted leprosy. One day the sage's son kidnapped someone else's wife. Ritavak then realized that all the sufferings were due to the evil deeds of his son. He concluded that it was better to have no sons than to have a son who was evil. Evil sons send their parents to hell. Ritavak went to the sage Garga and asked him, "Why did I have such an evil son? I have always followed the righteous path. It is because of something that I have done, or it is because of some sin that my son has committed?" "Neither," replied Garga. "All this happened because your son was born under evil stars when the nakshatra Rivati was in the sky. That is the cause of all your misery." At this, Ritavak cursed the nakshatra Rivati that it should fall down from the sky. Everyone marveled to see this happen. The star fell on Mount Kumuda and lit up the surrounding forest, hills and waterfalls. And this beautiful region came to be known as Raivataka, since the star Rivati had fallen there. A beautiful lake was also created when the star fell, and this lake was full of lotus flowers. From this lake there emerged a pretty woman who was named Trivati. She was brought up by the sage Pramucha in his ashrama. When Rivati grew up, Pramucha began to think in terms of getting her married off, but he could not find a suitable husband for her. He therefore asked Agni, and Agni told him that appropriate husband for Rivati was King Durgama, who was strong, brave, and courteous. Durgama was descended from Priyavrata, Swayambhuva Manu's eldest son. One day Durgama came to the forest on a hunt and arrived at Pramucha's ashrama. He met Rivati, and Pramucha told him the entire story, including what he had learned from Agni. It was therefore agreed that Durgama and Rivati would get married. But Rivati had a condition. She desired to get married when the nakshatra Rivati was in the sky. Unfortunately, the star had fallen from the sky as a result of Ritavak's curse. But Pramucha used the powers of his own tapasya to restore the star to the sky, and Durgama and Rivati got married. "What boon do you desire?" Pramucha asked of Durgama. "I am descended from Swayambhuva Manu," replied Durgama. "I would like to have a son who will be Manu." "Granted," said Pramucha. Durgama and Rivati had a son named Raivata, who was righteous, learned, and could not be defeated by humans in battle. He ruled over the whole world in this Manvantara. The Indra was Ribhu. The seven rishis were Hiranya Roma, Vidashri, Urdhvavahu, Vedavahu, Sudhama, Parjnya, and Vasishha. In the first five Manvantaras, all the Manus, with the exception of Svarachisha Manu, were descended from Swayambhuva Manu. The sixth Manvantara was Chakshusha Manvantara. In an early life, this Manu had been born from Brahma's eyes or Chakshu. So in this life too he came to be known as Chakshusha. The sage Anamitra's wife was Bhadra, and Anamitra and Bhadra had a son. The son was learned and good and was also Jatismara. He can remember his previous life. Bhadra placed the newly born son on her lap and began to kiss and fondle him. At this the son began to smile. "Why do you smile, my son?" asked Bhadra. The son replied, "Can you not see the cat that is waiting there to eat me if it gets the chance? Can you not see the female demon known as the Jataharini that is also waiting to grab me? I will tell you why I smiled when you embraced me. The cat and the Jataharini are attracted to me for their own selfish reasons. They want to eat me up, and you also love me and embrace me for your own selfish reasons, except that you will demand what you want to me only when I grow up. That is the reason for my smiles. You don't really know who I am. We have met as mother and son only 5 or 7 days ago, yet you embrace me and love me." Hearing this, Bhadra became angry. "If you do not like my kisses and embraces, forsake me," she said. "I also forsake whatever selfish needs of mine you might serve as a son." So saying, Bhadra left the newly born son and departed. The Jataharini kidnapped the son. There was a king named Vikranta, who had also had a son. The Jataharini placed Bhadra's son into the bed that was next to Vikranta's wife, and stole the prince from there. It left the prince in third house and stole a newly born son from that house, which it then proceeded to eat. That is the sort of things that Jataharini always do. King Vikranta did not know that the son who had been left at his wife's bedside was not really his son. He therefore brought the son up as a kshatriya and named his Ananda. Ananda had a guru, and one day his guru asked him to touch his mother's feet. "Which mother's feet will I touch?" asked Ananda. "The one who gave me the birth, or the one who brought me up?" Hearing this, the Guru was greatly surprised, and Ananda told him that he was in fact Anamitra's son and had been brought there by a Jataharini. King Vikranta's real son Chaitra had been left by Jataharini in a Brahmana's house. The Brahmana's son had been devoured by the Jataharini. The Guru did not know how this mess might be sorted out, but Ananda told him to bring Chaitra from the Brahmana's house and restore him to his rightful father, King Vikranta. As for Ananda himself, he intended to go to the forest for meditation. Brahma appeared before Ananda and told him to refrain from tapasya. He told him that he was destined to be the sixth Manu. That it was his path towards bliss. Tapasya was unnecessary for him. Brahma also renamed Ananda Chakshusha. Chakshusha married Vidharba, the daughter of King Ugra, and ruled over the world. During the Chakshusha Manvantara, the Indra was Manajava. The 7 rishis were Sumetha, Viraja, Havishmana, Unnata, Madhu, Ati, and Sahishnu. The 7th Vaivasvata Manvantara is a Manvantara that is now current. So say the Puranas. Vishvakarma had a daughter named Samjna. Samjna married the son, and they had a son who was destined to be Manu. Since this son was born of the son of Vivasvata, he came to be known as Vivasvata Manu. The energy of the sun was actually too strong for Samjna's eyes, and she could not bear to look at her husband. She lowered her eyes, or sometimes she glanced at her husband only out of the sides of her eyes. The angry the sun, and the sun cursed her that she would have the god Yama and the river Yamuna as children. This what happened, but the energy of the sun was still too strong for Samjna. She thereupon decided that she would leave her husband and depart for her father's house. But so that the sun might not know, she created from her own body a woman who looked exactly like her. This woman was called Chaya, which means shadow. Samjna told Chaya, "Stay here in my husband's house and pretend to be me. Don't tell anyone that you are not me." "So be it," replied Chaya. "I will do you bidding, but only so long as no one curses me or pulls me by the hair. As soon as that happens, I will relate the truth." Samjna agreed to this and went off to her father's house. Vishvakarma was extremely glad to see his daughter. Samjna had of course not told her father what she had done. So after a few days had passed, Vishvakarma told his daughter to return to her husband. A married daughter should rightfully be by her husband's side and not by her father's. Samjna was thus constrained to leave her father's house and could not return to the of her husband. She adopted the form of a mare and began to perform tapasya in the northern Kuru kingdom. The son had never realized that Samjna had been replaced by Chaya. The son and Chaya had two sons and a daughter. But it was noticed that Chaya was not as loving towards Vivasvata, Yama or Yamuna as she was to these other children. Vivasvata did not seem to mind this, but Yama was greatly hurt. One day Yama raised his foot to kick Chaya, and Chaya cursed him that he would be born on earth. Hearing this, the son was greatly surprised, for no mother curses her own son. The son called Chaya to him and started to curse her. At this, Chaya revealed the whole story and explained that she was Chaya and not Samjna. Samjna was brought back, and Vishvakarma reduced the energy of the sun so that Samjna might bear to look at her husband. Vishvakarma uses this excess energy from the sun to fashion Shiva Trishula trident, Vishnu's chakra bladed discus, and Shakti spears of the Vasus and Agni. Other divine weapons as well as Kubera's palanquin were also made from this excess energy. Before Samjna actually returned to her husband's house, the son adopted the form of a horse and journeyed Samjna in the northern Kuru kingdom. In their forms of horses, the son and Samjna had 3 children. The first 2 were the 2 Ashvinis, Nasatya and Dashra. The third son was Revanta. Vivasvata became Manu. In this Manvantara, Urjasvi became Indra. And the 7 rishis were Atri, Vasishta, Kashyapa, Gautama, Bharadvaja, Vishvamitra and Jamadagni. In each kalpa or circle there are 14 Manus and 14 Manvantaras. 7 Manus and 7 Manvantaras have already been described. The son and Chaya had a son named Savarni. He was destined to be the 8th Manu. In this Manvantara, the 7 Rishi would be Rama, Vyasa, Galava, Kripa, Rishyashringa, Diptimana and Druni. The Indra would be Vali, the king of the deities. Om Shakti Hrim, Om Namo Narayanaya, Om Sachit Ekam Brahma, Om.